Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Happy April. It's a new month. And we're excited to be here. So we're talking all about data today. And let's see, like scorecards. How do you know that you're measuring the right things? How do you know if you're even being productive? This is what we're going to talk about today. So, and what we always see is that companies that have truly mastered their scorecard and their data love it. They're like, yes, give me more of it. The ones that haven't usually kind of hate it or just full blown hate it. They're like, I don't know
Yep.
what I should be measuring. What is the
Yep.
purpose of this? It's just like taking up time. But so we're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah. And it makes
today
sense,
we're
right?
gonna give you. Oh, we've got like a delay. I feel like Colin.
I know it's driving me crazy.
All right, I'll let you. Now we know that. Now we know that. But today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna give you one measurable to rule them all, which is called the critical unit, which we're gonna talk about. But what it comes down to is there's like this variation on an old adage saying if you measure a little, you learn a lot. If you measure a lot, you learn nothing. AKA, like the more you distract yourself with all these little numbers, it just becomes too overwhelming and you're not really doing anything at that point. So we want to really focus you in on one.
That's right. And I also always say, if a business can understand their business in, let's say, 5 numbers, they're going to be better off than the business that requires 15 numbers to try and see the picture, right? Because the whole team's not going to memorize 15. You're not going to be walking around knowing 15 in your mind. You've got a lot of effort to track 15. If you can get your business down to the smallest number, and so we're not going to cover all of them today, but we are going to cover the most important, like you said, the one number to rule them all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about how you've used this in some of your businesses?
Yeah, well, I've found, and my businesses when I got into them are no, like so many businesses struggle with not having a common language today. Is like we need one number that is the most common language within the business. And so one example, like within my cabinet business, when I came into the business, parts of the business were measured and thought of in terms of like the linear feet of the cabinet, meaning, I've got a 12-foot section of cabinets here. That's 12 feet worth of cabinets. But the other parts of the business thought about it in terms of the number of cabinets. So that 12 feet may be 3 cabinets or 4 cabinets. And then a totally different part of the business who did the installs, they just thought, how many houses are we installing? And so what ended up happening was nobody could speak the same language. It was like coming up with what we call a critical unit. It was like the Rosetta Stone, right? When it was first discovered, the Rosetta Stone, for anybody who doesn't know beyond the, the translation software, it took Greek and hieroglyphics and a third language and put them all on the same level. And so that's the only reason we have any comprehension of what hieroglyphics actually mean, is because they found and discovered a Rosetta Stone. So whoever built that was really doing everyone a huge favor. So this is kind of the Rosetta Stone within your business.
I like that. Yeah, so we're going to go over the 3 elements of a critical unit and how to implement it in your business. We'll have Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, type them in the chat. We'll be watching that and we can answer them at the end, or if they fit in somewhere, we'll just throw them in. But let's start off with the first element, which is one, what is your critical unit? Or thinking about it in a different way, what is your widget that your company makes?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to think of it is like what most common unit of measure. Like what is, you said widget, and we kind of always talk about like a mythological business that uses widgets, but in a simple sense, it's what are you producing that you're actually getting paid for? And there's a couple of ways to look at it. It's like if your company is busy today, it's because they're having to do a lot of this. If your company is not busy, So if people are going to be out on vacation or PTO or paternity or maternity leave, like the work that you're worried about not being able to cover for is typically a good sign of what your critical unit is.
Mm. Yeah, so we have a couple of examples. You might be like, well, I don't really know what that is. So in your example, Colin, you've come to the conclusion that cabinets are your widget. If you're like a web designer, you might say, oh, I have a thumbs up. If you're a web designer, you might say that your critical unit is number of web pages that you're designing. So not necessarily websites, because websites can be all sort of different sizes, but one website might have 4 web pages and one might have 23. So the web page might be a better critical unit for you. We have a client that their critical unit is a number of videos that they produce. So those are some examples that you can have. The other thing with a critical unit is that you should be able to see progress on these units on a daily, weekly basis. So it's not like after 3 months, then you see one unit be created. You should be able to track it on a much shorter time span.
Exactly. And so the way to look at that, so the cabinets are a really good example because again, we had linear feet and we had number of cabinets and then we had the number of jobs. We want the smallest unit of measure that is easily identifiable within the business. So the number of jobs was too big of a unit because like you said, some houses were getting kitchens and 3 bathrooms and whatever, a wet bar. Like that is going to look different on the job basis, but a cabinet is still a cabinet. You could argue the linear feet was a smaller unit of measure. So one of the things we want is like a small unit of measure so that you can see that progress. The problem with the linear feet is that when people were producing cabinets, they'd get a set of drawings, they'd build a cabinet, and then they're starting to push it down the line. And all of a sudden they're pulling out a tape measure to go like, wait a minute, is that 3? Is it 4 feet? It wasn't as identifiable as being able to step back and go like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we got 12 on the line right now. That's 12 cabinets. It was just the level of clarity was much greater. And so to your point, we've helped, let's not do number of jobs. Let's not do, this big number, how many websites, because it may take you 2 months to build a website, but how long does it take to build a page? Like, let's get it down to a more manageable chunk.
Mm-hmm. And really what it comes down to is that this unit defines success at your company. So like if you're doing well, you're doing a lot of these. If you're not doing well, you're not doing very many.
Exactly. And then we'll kind of talk about all the other ways to look at it. But yes, that's it's kind of like the big push. We're going to get X number done, right?
Yeah. The other thing is key to unlocking your efficiency in your company so that all of your team knows that this is what efficiency looks like, is getting through a lot of these widgets. It's the key to engaging your team around productivity and measurables so that they feel engaged. And then the other thing that we want to caution against is ideally you would avoid using dollar units like revenue, because that's just not as motivating to most of your team as like, well, I made the company more money today. Cool, I guess. But if you're like, I can say that I made the company 16 cabinets. That feels more motivating to a lot of staff.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them don't see the dollar side if they're not in sales or they're not in accounting. They may not even know the dollar side, but everybody knows we make cabinets. How many did we make?
Yeah. Also, a lot of times your operations team, they're producing the cabinets, but they're not in control of how much that cabinet was sold for. So the thing that they can control is what's being produced, not what it's costing or bringing in. Speaking of operations, I'm going to go into our second element here, and that is you should be applying your critical unit to all of your departments, even outside of operations, because operations or your delivery team is the one that makes the most sense. That's the one that you can say like, well, operations is what's producing these widgets. So obviously it's very connected to your critical unit, but you can use that for other departments too. Can't you, Colin?
Yeah. And typically developing a brand new critical unit for someone, we like to start in operations because like we talked about, a huge part of this is about clarity. And everybody knows, again, like everyone can physically see how many cabinets we got done. Well, people can't really see what's happening in the drafting department in the same way. They can't see what's happening in sales. It's usually a much smaller number of people. So we start with the most apparent and obvious. We get that work unit to where it makes sense there. And then we start rolling it out both into sales as well as finance, office, drafting, wherever, right? It's the best way to kind of build out. And again, so if you think of this Rosetta Stone we're building, it's really to get across those three departments. I'm going to start with the one we're most comfortable with. We know it really, really well. And then I'm going to figure out how to translate it in sales and finance. So in the case of sales, as an example, we would be looking at, we're not just quoting jobs. We now are quoting a number of cabinets. We're now quoting, when we talk about whether it's our pipeline or the deal we just closed, we would say, hey, we just sold 17 web pages, not we just sold another website or 2 websites. We'd start to communicate it in that unit of measure and look at our pipeline. Like, hey, we've got a total pipeline of 150 pages. And what that does that's so breakthrough is that it gets our sales team now presenting information in language that the ops team can start to understand what the impact would be. Instead of like, oh my gosh, we got a huge pipeline. We're going to close some deals this month, guys. Nobody knows what to do with that information, but breaking it down into that unit of measure is like life-changing in a company.
Yeah. It also can help operations do their capacity planning in a much easier way. Instead of saying, well, we have X number of $1 million in the pipeline. Well, I don't know what that means if I'm a production person. Versus I have 200 web pages in the pipeline. Like, whoa, okay, we might need to think about what our capacity is and like what is our work on hand.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the really killer part is if you think about it from the ops view, it would be, let's say I've got 3 web designers. I would know each web designer can get about 2 pages done per day. That means my daily capacity is about 6 web pages. I can do roughly 30 a week. Like you would start to be able to take that core number and kind of extrapolate out what it means in your operational sense. And then if somebody says, hey, I just landed 17, pages on this new deal, okay, that's roughly half a week. Like how powerful is that versus just saying, hey guys, we got another deal, like it's so powerful to kind of start to put it in a language, and you don't have to be a finance person. You don't have to care about, the dollars and cents numbers of the business to be able to get the impact that we're talking about.
I love what you just said about knowing if you get a new deal, like how much time is that going to take the team? Like that's 2.5 weeks worth of work.
And every team member knows it. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Oh,
and then,
so cool.
One of the dreams that we're trying to get more efficient is to start to say, like, how efficient is this department? How efficient is this step in the process? How efficient are individual team members? All the things that you ultimately want to know about a business can come back on the Rosetta Stone here to this like one core unit of can be weighed against. Like, what's my labor per web page? What's my, which department is able to move fastest through the different web pages? It just becomes like game changing in terms of putting everything on a similar unit of measure.
Yeah. And you can also have this go all the way through the company. So the finance team can be reporting on your P&L and your balance sheet in terms of the number of web pages. You can say what of your accounts receivable is X number of cabinets. So your entire company can then talk about and use the same language.
Yes, which is huge. And especially we've kind of talked about this a little bit about where people are in their journey of sharing the numbers with the team. The beauty of having your kind of Rosetta Stone, your core critical unit be something that everyone already knows about is that then you could say, like, if you weren't comfortable divulging the full numbers, you say, hey guys, last month's revenue was 89 web pages. Like, amazing job, guys. Like, that would be a proxy for sharing raw financial data. And as we said earlier, a proxy that's actually better and more motivating for the team than the alternative of going like, hey guys, it was $112,000, like fantastic job. People are going to be like, well, I made the same amount. Like, I don't know. What does that mean? I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's bad. But if we know 89 is our record, we've never done 89 web pages, amazing job, the whole team understands it.
Yeah, love that. Okay, we're going over to our third element here, and that is, this is where you get to obsess over your critical unit. What does that mean? Hello. I've lost Colin again. Okay, so
Oh, sorry.
this is how you know it's live, people. Oh, funny.
Are you
Okay,
laughing at
so
me
what
because
is
my
it?
frozen face wasn't good?
No, I'm laughing that we're like a little out of sync, but it's okay. We're doing our best here. All right, so obsess over your critical unit. It means we kind of already talked about this, but get the entire team engaged on it. You want that to be your common language around your company, is everyone knows that we talk in terms of web pages. This is where goals come into play. So set your critical unit goals that everyone can see, ideally in a really obvious place that they're looking at on a regular basis. Weekly goals are ideal when you can. I mean, hey, daily goals, if you can get daily goals, even better. Like the smaller the unit that you're tracking these goals to is ideal. And then measure all efficiency against your critical unit. The last piece is this concept of people think about the exception to the rule a lot of times. We're like, well, these web pages are more complicated than these web pages, and shouldn't that be worth more time? So Colin, can you talk a little bit about how to navigate the exceptions?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan. Anytime we try something new, we need to when we get really good at our jobs as leaders and managers, when we anticipate what the point of failure is going to be. And I'll tell you right now, we'll own it, full disclosure. The very first point of failure when you try to launch us in a team is that you're going to have somebody be like, wait a minute, hold on. All these cabinets aren't the same. So that's not really fair. We should count that one as 1.5 cabinets. That should be 0.75 cabinets. And that one should be 2 cabinets. And it's totally natural. The team it's almost like when you know too much, it's hard for you to relax away from that and just kind of understand the theoretical concept of what we're trying to aim for. You need to obsess over the rule, disregard the exceptions to start with, and get this as simple as possible so that people actually adopt it. It actually starts to mean something. And like I always say, and we always talk about, ramp up the complexity very, very slowly. Like, do not dive right in with a bunch of crazy heavy complexity. And I've seen this die on the vine so many times because of that. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of kills the entire concept. The entire concept is simplicity. So once we add complexity, we're starting to kind of like choke the concept at its core. Once everyone knows the most basic, and like you said, it's changed the language. Like people are saying, okay, guys, how much are we supposed to get today? It's no longer how many jobs. It's now about how many of these critical units we're going to get done. As the team is project managing and setting up their week, they're like, all right, guys, we got to do 39 pages this week. I know that's a heavy load. Anybody got any ideas of how we can divide this work and get more efficient? Like you're starting to have the great conversations that drive efficiency, because we're talking in a simple language. But if somebody goes, well, wait a minute, a homepage should be, that should count as 2. And then a contact us page is super simple. That should be a half. The minute they start doing that, the whole concept will kind of implode on itself.
Mm-hmm. You do not need a formula in order to figure out your critical unit. You should, I'll say that again. If your critical unit requires a formula, it's too complicated.
That's right. Yeah. No Excel, no anything. It should be like 1, 2, 3. Like that's the critical unit.
Yep. Excellent. An example that we have of how this has worked out and how we've used this with some of our clients. We've got one client that produces videos. Okay. So they make videos for other companies, They were tracking kind of their progress, but it was more in terms of revenue generated for each of these videos, and they weren't actually able to even see how much they had generated until the month had closed. So actually, like 2 weeks after the month had closed, they had figured out what they had done in March. Now what we have is that we have a live tracker that shows how many videos they are creating at any given time. And we have a month to date tracker, so they can say yesterday they had created 12.3 videos, and today they've made the equivalent of 13.7 videos. And so they can track it like that. It's in their dashboard, it's in their project management system, everything that they're using every single day. They have goals set up on a weekly, monthly basis for how many videos you're trying to accomplish. What is your record? So they have like, this is how many that we've hit at a maximum, and we're trying to break that record every time. And the productivity of that team has gone up so much. Like 2024 average is just way above what they did in 2023. And it's so fun to see.
Yeah. And it's obviously they're the ones doing the hard work, right? So
Yeah.
by no means does this suddenly do the work for you, but it creates such just absolute clarity around what we're trying to accomplish. And that's one of the big things we work on, with clients is a lot of times there's kind of this, a lot of noise that exists around what should be their critical unit.
Yeah.
And so the team doesn't have total clarity to it. It may not be being reported quickly, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So a huge part of our effort is around the data side of the business and saying, like, we have got to make absolute clarity where we're at with the critical unit at all times. And it's really once we start peeling that onion and kind of all the different layers, we get down to something really good. And now the team is like, okay, I got it. Like, no big deal. I know exactly what I need to do to keep moving the ball forward.
Mm-hmm. And then you can say, oh, well, we're kind of behind schedule right now and week 1 of April. Then you can make changes. And so you're not
Exactly.
relying on lag data that like, well, if we found out today what they had done in February, well, you can't do anything about that at that point.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one question that I could see coming up, Colin, is what do you tell employees that don't have a direct relationship with their critical unit? For example, like a lot of times your finance department or your IT department isn't actually making these web pages, cabinets, whatever it should be. How do you keep them motivated towards the critical unit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So typically in business, we've got certain departments that kind of get credit as the ones who make money, and then other departments that are thought of as the ones who cost money, right? And typically our sales and our ops get all that credit. It's like, hey, we shipped our orders this week, ops team, you killed it, or we landed another big deal, like sales team, you're really killing it this month. And then you've got the IT person who's kind of lurking in the shadows, like, hope that nobody's looking at me like I'm not a contributor. The beauty is, and this is where this critical unit gets even more powerful, is now everyone understands what the entire company's goal is. Entire company, the goal of sales is to sell more critical units at a higher price per critical unit. The ops team is to deliver more critical units at a lower cost per critical unit. That's it. So if I'm IT, I now can look at the company and say, what can I do to help move the needle, to help support, whether it's remove bottlenecks, whatever it is, how can I help actually support those departments, not just in some general, like, oh, help them get into their email sort of way, but in a very targeted, specific way. Like, how can I help us deliver more units?
Mm-hmm. It helps you prioritize.
Absolutely. And then the finance side is a lot more around the data and around making sure that the team has total clarity across all the areas that we talked about. And so they're actually able to show numbers in critical units instead of just the kind of raw data that comes out of the accounting software. It also just drives home. Like, even if I'm the finance person and I'm looking at a vendor bill, I want to understand, like, how many critical units does this amount of business like represent? it just starts to like put, the view of the business in 3D compared to what people have ever seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important part. Everyone is connected to the critical unit. Otherwise, I mean, the critical unit is what the business is here to do. So if you don't have any relationship to it, you're probably not employed at the company.
That's right.
So there is some relationship, and you just have to make that really clear for everyone. Yeah. So I think that's what we have today. It's kind of a quicker topic, but it's so important. This idea of nailing in just one measurable that everyone can focus in on. We go back to that adage that we started with. If you measure a little, you learn a lot. If you measure a lot, you learn nothing. It's focusing on one really takes your company to the next level.
Yep. And it's a sign of kind of everything we do, right? When we're working with clients and what we always recommend to people. This thing is a journey, and it's a march. This is not, hey, if I woke up this morning and knew a handful of things to do and I just did them today, it'd be done and I'd be super successful. It continuously grinding in your business. That's what we love helping people do. I mean, that's what we recommend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what else do we have going on this week? We actually have a big thing going on this week, don't we, Colin? Maybe.
So, I know that it's out there. We're just struggling this back and it's out there right now. So we have an offer out there. We're bringing on a handful of new clients this week. It's something that we don't always are pitching in the group, but we do want to make clear that this is exactly what we help companies on. We look at your business in a different way. We are not a typical fractional CFO that's just gonna slam the P&L and the balance sheet in front of you and be like, good luck, this wasn't a good month, better next month, or give you some big crazy strategy that your team has no idea how to run, right? We're helping companies improve in all the ways that we talk about. And we don't do this offer very often. We are not like go sign up 50 people tomorrow type of company. We're much more about focusing on incredible results for every single client that we bring on.
Mm-hmm. And then, so like Colin said, this offer is very limited to this week. It actually expires tomorrow at midnight. So if you're interested, if this sounds like something that might be a good fit for you, drop elevate, the word elevate below. We'll hop on a call. We'll see if we're the right fit, and then we'll go from there. But we'd love to hear from you. This is what
That's right.
We're so passionate.
Absolutely. And wouldn't you sleep better at night knowing you've got us on the case working on this? Most business owners, I know a ton of business owners, they don't want to do this. They either don't have the time, don't have the energy, don't have the experience. Like, this is the perfect thing to engage your team with and, help get us on the case. We would love to meet you, learn about your business, and see if we can help.
Yeah. Well, that concludes it for us this week, but we're here every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central. So we'll see you again next week. Like I said, drop the word elevate below if you want to chat with us. Otherwise, we'll see you in the group. Bye-bye.